So shall I just begin from there? So welcome everybody. I'm just going to share my slides and we'll start from the beginning. So interestingly, I have just lost my share button. Let's see. Okay. Right, I'm just negotiating trying to get to the buttons when the sharing bit's in the way. So bear with me for a second. There we go. Okay, so I've called this talk Setting Yourself Up for Wellbeing Throughout Your Career, because what I hope I'm sharing today isn't just some tips and tricks and things that you might use tomorrow and then kind of forget about, but really is a whole new way of looking at wellbeing that that can make a huge difference to everything that you do, and not just through your career, but in every aspect of life. So that's a bold claim. So let's see how we go. So let me just introduce myself. I'm the founder of a course called Connection, Compassion and Wellbeing in Medicine and Surgery, which is a coaching program for trainees, teaching this new empowering approach to wellbeing that I'm going to share with you today. I've got other coaching programs, Leadership from Within, Start With You, and I coach surgeons, physicians, and other leaders too in business and all areas of life. And I'm the author of publications about how to thrive in challenging circumstances. And as Lauren said earlier, I'm leading the Rising Tide project for the VSGBI, which I'll explain a little bit more about in a minute. And why do I do all of this? Well, really, I'm on a mission to help people understand that change starts with each one of us. And sorry, I'm just letting somebody else in. So change starts with each one of us, and I really want to empower individuals when faced with a culture of negativity and blame. And of course, that's not just in medicine and surgery. We're seeing that in so many places at the moment. I want to empower you to create something new. So rather than feeling helpless and in fighting against what you don't want, and allowing what's going on around you to impact your well-being, I want to show you how you can transform your corner of the world, which is how all sustainable change really happens. So I'm sorry, we're having a few tech issues this evening. It's me now. So these are just a few examples of clients that I have worked with, some medical, some not, but all sorts of different people. So let me tell you a little bit about the Rising Tide project, which has been initiated by Anthony Egan, who's the chair of the Workforce Committee at the Vascular Society. And he's really passionate about this project. And I think without him, it wouldn't be happening. But he has persuaded the Vascular Society to fund it to a certain extent. I'll say a little bit more about that later. But as Lauren said earlier, it's come on the back of various surveys about bullying, harassment, undermining, burnout that have shown really horrendous problems in those areas, which of course, all of which have this huge impact on well-being. And previously, everything the Vascular Society had done to try and address those things was really by kind of condemning them, not surprisingly, but essentially by telling people to stop it in a strongly worded email. So either telling people to stop it or improving the complaints procedure. And I don't think it's probably a great surprise to any of us why neither of those things has had a really great impact. So the Rising Tide, I called it the Rising Tide because really I'm suggesting a new approach, which is getting everybody involved and not just trying to make a difference to the perpetrators, not trying to change the perpetrators, but really educating everyone to see their power, your power, to change the culture and establish a better working environment in which those behaviours just can't be sustained, and so which is much more conducive to good well-being. And I don't know if you've seen any of these. Lauren referred to it as rather a well-kept secret going on in the background, which is not what it's intended to be. I've been interviewing surgeons and trainees and vascular nurses about their existing practice, good and bad things that they've experienced. There are materials now. Oh, the interviews are on the Vascular Society website, and there are materials that I've created on the website as well. There's a whole dedicated area to well-being. And obviously a webinar like this comes under the umbrella of that project. And if you find this webinar helpful, then I really encourage you to feed that back, because this is something which I would love to do more of in this project, but which isn't really currently funded to a great extent. So if you would like to see more of it, I think there's a lot about this project that with feedback from members saying that they value it, it can and will be developed further. Whereas I think if we don't hear much from people, it will only be of a certain size. Equally, if you'd like to be interviewed, or you work with somebody that you think it would be great to have them interviewed, please get in touch. I would love to hear from you or from them. So let's talk about well-being. I want to start with this. You are responsible for your own well-being. And that might sound like I'm giving you something else to do on top of everything else you've got to do. And that might sound like taking the pressure off the people who are causing the problems, who are troubling your well-being. But I want to tell you that, in fact, that it's really good news that you are responsible for your own well-being. And I really urge you not to give that responsibility away to anybody else. You just don't have to let anybody or anything have power over your well-being. But I think we live in a world where it seems like others do have power over our well-being, and I think that's a huge problem. So I hope by the end of today that you'll be seeing that a little bit differently. And I know that you're all really highly skilled at taking responsibility for your technical and your medical and surgical learning. And it's just as important for you to take responsibility for your well-being, because it underpins everything. And so what I want to share with you today is ways that you can do that without adding more to your workload. And I'm not going to be giving you hours of breathing exercises and meditation apps. It's really something much simpler that underpins everything. If you set yourself up for well-being, then for your own well-being, if you have a better understanding of your own well-being, and you'll also have a better understanding of others and how their well-being works, those that you lead and everyone in your team. So whatever your seniority, you're always influencing others, whether you see yourself as a leader or not yet. So what we're covering today is relevant to this leadership part of the vascular surgery curriculum. So everything that the work that I do and the Rising Tide project really could be summed up in the following quote: "You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete." So I really want to enroll you in this vision of creating a new culture where bullying, harassment, undermining, and the stress, distress, anxiety, burnout, and overwhelm that they cause are no longer acceptable or accepted. Because you, all of you right here on this call, are the leaders of the future. And if you know how to lead powerfully in creating a culture supportive to everyone's well-being, then the culture will change. It has to. So whoever you work with, you always have the power to make a difference, whatever your level of seniority, and you can start right now. And I hope that you will after you've heard what I've got to say today. So just a couple of words about how to engage with today's session. You know, this is not an academic session. it's going to be a bit different. So be open to hearing something new. I'm going to be turning ideas on their head about well-being. So just listen out for something that just might ring true to you. Given that there are currently so many problems with mental health, and they seem to be on the increase, and so many interventions don't seem to be working, I invite you to consider this new perspective and see if you can hear something today that just makes sense to you. But equally, I'm not asking you to take my word for it. And you may find yourself objecting to some of the things you say and thinking, oh, that's ridiculous and that can't work, and it doesn't work that way. So I invite you to be open to experiment. And over the course of this webinar, I'm going to be offering you 3 experiments to take part in when you go back into your working environment or your home environment. You can do them wherever you like. And they're not onerous, they're just different ways of doing things. I will be sharing them on the slides, but I've also created a handout that Jack's going to share at the end of the webinar. So anything that says handout on it on a slide, there's a that's on the handout. So you don't need to, if you're thinking of taking notes, you don't need to bother. It'll all be there. I'll try and point those out. And then at the end, when I finished, I'm very open to answering questions, hearing your comments, and talking about what you've heard today. So another quote for you. I love this quote from Einstein. We cannot solve our problems with the same level of thinking that created them. And what we need to deal with well-being and culture change in the workplace is a new level of thinking. But that doesn't mean a more difficult or more sophisticated level of thinking. It just means a different level of thinking. And I think that what that really is a simpler level of thinking, a way that we overlook. We're so well trained in analysing and detail and research, and sometimes the answers to these things are much simpler. So what my objectives today are to transform the way that you see and understand well-being so that you feel empowered rather than under threat. So you don't feel your well-being is constantly under threat, and that you know how to look after yourself, that you know how to start to create a working environment which is more conducive to well-being. And I want to give you some practical experiments, as I said, to try for yourself. So let me say a little bit about what I think well-being is, because I think there are loads of definitions bandied around. I think well-being is being able to thrive, be at your best, be passionate about your work, being able to say no, being able to maintain healthy relationships, collaborate effectively, have the capacity to support others, keep life in balance. So well-being is all of those things and more, but this part up here is really key. Well-being is being able to experience those things, being able to feel those things. What well-being isn't, is feeling like that all the time. And I think this is part of a sort of modern way of thinking about well-being, is that we ought to be able to feel okay all the time. And that's just not realistic. It's normal to feel overwhelmed sometimes, to burst into tears in the toilet sometimes, to overreact, to get angry. It doesn't mean that your well-being is absent. And I think that's really important to know. Because well-being for me is a default setting that we can come back to, and we do come back to when our mind settles. Knowing that is really important, because when you get upset and overwhelmed, often we add more to it. We start worrying that we shouldn't be feeling like that we shouldn't be crying in the toilet, that there's something wrong with us. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with us. It just means that we've got a lot on our mind, and it's obscuring our well-being. But our well-being hasn't gone away. And usually when we feel like that, we think, well, there are all these external things I need to do to get it back. That person needs to change, and this situation needs to change, and that job is too difficult and too overwhelming. All these things feel like they're they're impacting our well-being. They're actually taking it from us. But you don't need those external things to change for you to find your way back to well-being. You need to let your mind settle. So we experience well-being when we have less on our minds. It's as simple as that. When you've got too much on your mind, you can't experience it. I'll be saying more about this as we go through. So let's just remind ourselves, you are responsible for your own well-being. So what I want to talk about now is some ways that you can take that responsibility for your well-being. And I'm going to look at these 3 different things: questioning beliefs, showing up differently, and focusing your attention differently. And as I said, some of these are quite simple, but they make a massive difference. So be open to seeing something around this. So questioning beliefs. So here are a couple of widely held beliefs. We all have loads of beliefs. Many of our beliefs, we don't even realize are beliefs because they just look like truth, reality. That's just how the world is. I know it is. But they're what we believe. We've all been brought up believing different things, or in some cases, there are widely held beliefs in certain careers, in surgery, in medicine. So here's one of them. Until these circumstances change, I can't experience well-being. And often we think that seems so obvious that we just believe it. And, we'll point to the things that are wrong. And I'm not saying that they're not wrong, but I'm suggesting that it's not true that you can't experience well-being. And not only that, but believing this contributes to an even worse sense of well-being, because if you can't change the circumstances, then you really feel helpless. So let me tell you about a client who I worked with who was a obs and gynae consultant being investigated by the GMC. A colleague had complained about her. So over the course of our first 3 weeks of coaching, she went from being absolutely stressed out, overwhelmed, and unable to sleep, to sleeping soundly, feeling at peace with the whole process, and happily basically getting on with her life. Which is just as well because the process lasted another 18 months. But her circumstances didn't change. She was still subject to this investigation. She still had to go to meetings. She still had to do various things. But her sense of well-being really shifted because she stopped thinking about it all the time. She was able to take it off her mind and experience her well-being, which hadn't gone anywhere. Here's another belief that I think is very widely held, seems sort of obvious. I need to keep thinking about my problems in order for them to be fixed, because otherwise, how are they going to get sorted out? So take that client again. She stopped worrying about her problems and they did get fixed eventually. Now, she still had to go to the meetings. She still had to show the evidence she had to show. She still had to do stuff, but she didn't have to be thinking about her problems all the time in order for that to happen. So she was able to take it off her mind. Another example is a client who was finding that he had this really, really annoying colleague, apparently, who had these habits that just seemed so infuriating. And suddenly, after we talked about this, that colleague just seemed a whole lot less annoying. And they were able to create this really effective working relationship. So what happened was that my client kind of stopped focusing on all these guys' habits and thinking that they were an absolute showstopper. And my client relaxed. And then he engaged differently with this person. And then so his colleague engaged differently with him. Things started to change. So how does this happen? Let's look at it a bit more. So here are a bunch of things that look like they can take away our well-being. And I'm not saying that any of these things are great. I'm not saying these aren't bad things. There aren't things here that you really don't want in your experience. But what I am saying is that those outside things don't need to change for you to experience well-being. Now, what I'm not saying is this isn't the same as putting up with inappropriate behavior, keeping your head down, not making a fuss. I'm not saying that. But think of it this way. When you're thinking about your problems all the time, that leads to stress and overwhelm, helplessness, mental exhaustion, problems with your well-being, let's call them. And there you are, you lose touch with your well-being. But if your well-being seems to be attached to those things, all those bad things going on, then it feels like you have no alternative but to think about them all the time and to try and get rid of them. But the reality is that when you're not thinking about your problems all the time, then your mind is clearer. You get greater clarity of thought. When your mind's clear and you're thinking clearly, you get better ideas that make a difference. So all those problems that you've needed to deal with, you have better ideas about them. My client had better ideas about how to show up in a GMC investigation meeting when her mind was settled. She wasn't all panicky. Her BMA rep started saying to her, gosh, you're putting yourself across so much better, because she wasn't all caught up in thinking this was about her well-being. She knew this was about the process. So when we realize and we don't attach our well-being to these things, everything gets easier. Solutions appear that couldn't before when you're constantly churning on them. In different states of mind, things look different. We all know this. We all know that sometimes our kids' behavior is infuriating, and then another time it might be, oh, that's quite cute, really. It's, we have different states of mind, and when we can allow ourselves to find our way to a different state of mind, we come up with better solutions. So here's your first experiment, and this is on the handout, so you can download that at the end. So the experiment is to just consider, I don't expect you to believe me, that your sense of well-being might be independent of your circumstances. And think of something that's on your mind. It might be that really annoying colleague, or a problem that you're really trying to solve and you've just been up against for a while, or something in your department that's infuriating you. And what I'm inviting you to do is take a week off, or a month if you can bear it, trying to change that thing or solve it and see what happens. So essentially to take it off your mind, because your well-being is not at stake, and see what happens. It's an experiment. I invite you to try it. So let's have a look at a few other beliefs. And beliefs are really just habits of thinking about yourself, the world, and other people, which can adversely affect well-being. And these are all beliefs that I think are pretty common. So again, this is on a handout. So if you're interested in reading them back, they'll be there later. So I should know this, or I have to get everything right. Just kind of mentally tick off, do any of these sound familiar? I could have done it better. Criticism means I'm not good enough. I need to think about my mistakes to get better. Even though they say I'm doing fine, I don't feel as if I'm doing fine, and that means I'm not. My patients are more important than anything else. I work in a toxic system. I've heard that a lot. The NHS is a toxic system. No one really cares about me. I've got to keep my boss or my colleagues happy. So all of these, oh, there may be one more. No, there isn't one more. All of these are beliefs we carry around with us. And I just want to remind you, of which you may or may not sign up to, some or all of those. But I just want to remind you about the Einstein's quote about a different level of thinking. Because what I'm not saying is that these don't have any truth to them. I mean, probably at number 2, you could have done it better, whatever that thing is. But there are different ways of holding that thinking. Oh, I could have done that better. It's very different from, oh, I could have done that better. It's like, do we beat ourselves up with our beliefs, with our thinking, or do we use them to actually grow? So I just want to share with you, I want to ask you to start to question the truth of some of these things. And I just want to offer you a few alternatives. Because the work that I do is really about helping you to see that, in fact, you kind of choose what you want to believe. You've got into habits of thinking certain things because because it seems useful to you, and somehow it seems like it's protecting you or making you better. And medical training teaches you certain beliefs um, about how you need to keep striving, otherwise you won't get where you want to get to. And some of those things don't serve you in your well-being. But you are all intelligent enough people to entertain two different kinds of thinking about the same thing. And you already do it. You'll probably already have different ways of thinking with your family than you do at work. So we all sustain different ways of thinking. So let's have a look at these and some alternatives. So I should know this. I have to get everything right. Well, here's an alternative. I don't have to know everything. I'm learning. I should have done it better. I'll do it better next time. Criticism means I'm not good enough. I review criticism. Sometimes it's a great way to learn. Sometimes it's just somebody venting. Now, as I'm showing this, I just want to be clear. These are not like affirmations that I want you to start saying to yourself, even if you don't believe them. I'm asking you to question the truth of those statements on the left-hand side. Is it really any more true that criticism means I'm not good enough than that sometimes it's just somebody venting? It isn't any more true. It's just that our belief is that one is more true than the other. I know, no, I really do need to improve. And we beat ourselves up with these things. It affects our well-being. It does not make us better doctors, surgeons, parents, human beings. It does not serve us or anybody else, because when we are burning out from treating ourselves like this, we can't behave at our best. So let's have a look at a few more. I need to think about my mistakes to get better. I'm just going to flip through these and let you have a look at them. This is an interesting one. Maybe when you don't feel as if you're doing fine, you think that's true. That means something. But feelings are very, very unreliable. They tell you about your state of mind. They don't really tell you about how good a surgeon you are. Patients are more important than anything else. Well, they are important, but if you don't look after yourself, then you can't serve a single patient if you've burnt out and left the profession. I work in a toxic system. There is plenty wrong with the NHS, but when you label it all as toxic, that is neither true nor helpful, and you overlook the good aspects which bring you better feelings. I'll talk more about that later. No one really cares about me. Most people are helpful. This is one that Mohammed, you shared with me, that somebody said to you early in your career, most people are helpful. And when you come across people and you think they're going to be helpful, you have a better experience than if you think nobody cares. And if you come up against people that don't seem to care, then you're like, oh, well, never mind, because most people are helpful, and you move on rather than having a downer on yourself. Got to keep my boss and colleagues happy. Well, to some extent, but we've got values. Sometimes people get upset if you stick to them and do what you know is right. And this one speaks to identity, which is a massive topic, which I could do a whole webinar on. Being a surgeon is who I am. My job defines me. You can be committed to your work. You can be really committed, but you're always going to be more than that role. And it's important for your well-being that you hang on to that understanding. So here's your second experiment. Reflect on some of your beliefs and question whether they're serving you. So on the handout, you'll get that list that I've compiled, but just start to kind of have a think about things that you believe that may actually not be that helpful to you. Maybe they were helpful once and they're not anymore. Maybe they never were and they were just kind of put upon you by somebody else. So there could be some lurking in the background. So I encourage you just to kind of reflect on that. So we've looked at questioning beliefs. So now I just want to say a little bit about showing up differently, being a creator rather than a victim. So how do you think you do show up? Now, it can be hard to see this for ourselves, but sometimes we really notice how others show up. Some people show up as creating something really proactive. Some people just always seem to be the victim of circumstances. I'm going to say more about this in a minute. It makes a real difference, doesn't it, when people show up differently? And it makes a real difference how you show up. And it'll make a difference to everyone around you and their well-being, but it also makes a huge difference to you and your well-being, because you are always present in your life and creating responses in people around you. So you're always creating. We don't always realize this. We think we're just going along and slotting into an existing team culture or whatever. But how you show up, how you feel about things, what you think about things, how you speak, how you act is always making a difference. We know this is the case because, we all know that there are people who kind of are always negative and we call them mood hoovers or something like that, or people always complaining or criticizing. And there are others that are positive and helpful. So rather than thinking about how others show up, what about considering how you consistently show up? Because everything starts with you. Remember, I said that at the very beginning. Everything starts with us, even when we think it's somebody else's fault. So I'm not saying you should be faking cheerfulness or anything like that, but just start to notice what your habits of behavior are, which come from your habits of thought. What do you tend to see the negative in things? Do you tend to pick fault? Do you tend to look on the bright side? But are there places where you don't do that? So just start to notice that. Decide what's really important to you and be that. So you want to be actively creating. You're always creating the environment that surrounds you. But most often we're doing it unconsciously. It's just happening. You want to be really conscious of that and start to create the environment for which that you want for everyone around you, and then you will also benefit. So it reminds me of a client who once shouted at me, not at me, but in frustration, he shouted, "I just wish I could live in a more harmonious household." And then he stopped, heard himself, and we both laughed, because you can't live in a harmonious household if you're shouting and feeling infuriated all the time. He realized that he was contributing as much to that unharmonious household as anybody else was. So I invite you, if you think someone's being unsupportive, make it your thing to be the person that builds other people up. If you think that somebody isn't training you well, you focus on being the best trainer you can be, the most supportive. And, this is not avoiding the issue. There are maybe other things you might want to do as well about that trainer or that unsupportive person. But believe me, you making the difference from your point of view really does make a difference. So, seeing yourself as a creator, not a victim of circumstances, is really significant. And I just got a funny little thing that happened actually in the course of the Rising Tide project around this, was that Ansi Egan, who's the coordinator of the project, he said to me, oh, it's such a shame that you can't speak at the ASM. And I said, oh, why can't I? And he said, oh, well, this is several months ago. He said, oh, well, it's all the slots are taken. It's all decided. And I said, well, are you sure? You could just ask. And he was kind of about to object, and then he sort of went, oh, well, I suppose I could ask. And I don't know how that conversation then went, but turns out I've now got a few minutes speaking at the ASM in November. And what I do know for sure is that he wouldn't have asked if I hadn't asked that question. He just assumed that, and when I use that word victim, I'm not meaning somebody weak, I'm just meaning somebody who just thinks that they haven't got the influence, the power in that situation. Oh no, it's all decided. He thought he was the victim of that situation. But then he made himself the creator of it, and he created a slot for me to speak at the ASM. So fantastic. It's these simple things, these simple shifts. It's not whole great big, I need to create a whole new culture all in one go. It's these small steps that make such a huge difference. So experiment number 3 is to notice how you're showing up at different times. Just having been here and listened to me talk about this, you will start getting eyes and ears for it in different ways, and you'll notice how other people are showing up as well. But remember, it starts with you. Experiment with showing up differently and see what different results you create in the way you're being. This is a fun one to try out at home as well. When you're being different with your children or your partner, things change there too. I had a lovely client who had she had twin boys when we were working together, who were 3 at the time, and they were a real handful. And she started showing up differently with them. And oh, what a completely different experience of them she had by showing up differently, not showing up expecting them to be trouble, but showing up in a more powerful way as a creator of her relationship with them rather than a victim of their boisterous behavior. So stop saying to yourself things like, oh, that clinic's always a nightmare, or that person never helps, or oh, they're definitely going to do this when I say that. Show up differently, show up with different expectations, create other people differently in your mind before you meet them. And I guarantee you'll find something different happens. These experiments, I hope that you're getting the sense that they could be fun. They don't have to be big, heavy things. You can try them out in little ways. You can try them out wherever you like. So let's have a look at this third one, focusing your attention differently. And this is another example of having another different level of thinking. Not a more sophisticated way, but a really simple thing that is so easily overlooked. Because, where do we mostly focus our attention? Mostly we tend to focus our attention on the small percentage of things in our lives, whether that's at work, whether it's at home, whether it's our health or whatever it is. We focus on the small percentage of things that are wrong. Things we don't like, things that need to change, mistakes that we make ourselves. We love to spend a lot of time focusing on those. Our own uncomfortable feelings, kind of analysing them. What other people think of us, something we spend quite a lot of time thinking about typically, even though we don't really know what other people think about us. So we can kind of make it up in all sorts of different technicolor ways. Relationships which are difficult, they're the ones we spend the most time thinking about. General opinions that people bandy around about, like the NHS is toxic, this is wrong with the department. These things that are wrong is where we tend to put most of our attention. And again, this is not rocket science, what I'm about to say to you, but what about if you reflected on other things? When did you last reflect on what you really do like about your job and your colleagues? Things that work well. There are things everywhere that work well, but we don't tend to notice them because they're just normal. It's like, but what about this thing that's terrible? What you've just achieved, or your high level of skill, it is incredible. all of you, I know, have incredibly high levels of skill, but you don't think about that much, I would imagine, because it's always this drive to think about the next thing. And it's not that, of course, you're not always moving forward, but you need to give yourself the investment, really, of actually looking at how far you've come and what you have already done. This is not just a nice little exercise. This is something that really makes a difference. One great moment in your day, something that went really well, somebody that was really pleased with you, the praise that someone gave you. You know, how easy is it to brush that off, to go, oh yeah, but there was this other thing that didn't go so well. It's like, no, don't do that. Not because, you know, not because I say so, but because it's not good for your health. It's not good for your mental health. We focus on these bad things because we think that that's actually good for us. It's going to make us better. But actually, it weakens us. If you think that criticizing yourself and driving yourself and focusing on bad things is helpful, then I just want to say you're wrong. And try this other approach. Think about the relationships that are supportive and helpful. Think about something positive about the NHS or your department. That amazing cancer treatment that my sister had, which was just so well supported and effective. There are many, many things that you can put your attention on, but we don't tend to. So, experiment number 4 is to take time to notice and reflect on the good things that you experience and point them out to others. And don't get involved in complaining. You will start to notice how often you hear other people complaining about stuff and how often you do it yourselves. I'm really interested in this, and I'm quite shocked by how often still a complaint comes out of my mouth. But once you start noticing and realizing how unhelpful that is, it becomes more of a priority to redirect the conversation, to point out something better, to share something that's more helpful. So we've had a really good look at these different ways that you can take responsibility for your well-being, questioning your beliefs, showing up differently, and focusing your attention differently. There's lots more to say. I've really only scratched the surface. If you've enjoyed what I'm talking about, if something's resonating with you, then I really encourage you to look at my course, Compassion, Connection and Wellbeing in Surgery. There's a group version of this course starting in October. I also do it as a one-to-one coaching program, but you can find out more about that. So the experiments are here to recap on. Consider your sense of well-being is independent of your circumstances. Reflect on your beliefs and question them. Notice how you're showing up and take time to notice and reflect on the good things. All these are on the handout. So if you've heard something that you've enjoyed or resonates with you today, then do have a look at my website. I've got a free email course, the Medical Professional Self-Preservation Blueprint, that you can sign up for. All this is on the handout. There are lots of free materials on my website, booklets to download, and of course there's a course that I've already mentioned. And please connect with me. This code is for my LinkedIn profile, so do connect with me there. I share lots of stuff about well-being. Jack, I think, is going to share the experiments handout in the chat. And if you're at the ASM, please come and talk to me. And if there's anything that's come up for you today that you'd like to speak to me, contact me about privately, then my email address is there and I'd love to hear from you. So please do reach out and get in touch. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Lizzie. That was fantastic. I've certainly got some takeaways to think about, and we'll circulate that handover as well. Lol.
I think Jack's going to share it in the is it there in the chat now? Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Jack. Fantastic. So you can just click the PDF there. So I'm really happy. I know we've run over because we had a bit of a false start, but I'm really happy to hear any comments or answer any questions that anybody has. So please just go ahead. Thank you for your emojis and comments. Thanks, Samuel.
From my side, I think the idea about thinking about how you show up and how positive you think about, this day is going to be a good day, or it sounds a little bit basic, but actually things like which a lot of things have been taught to me before earlier in my career as well. I was thinking, I need to ask about every opportunity. So ask to be part of the opportunity. Ask, what can I do? Define your objectives early rather than assume knowledge. So especially in surgery for training, what am I going to do in this case? Take that space as a trainee and think, what am I going to do, or how can I learn, or what can I learn from this case? And that was something that a retired professor told me. So that defines you as here, you're being there and you're showing up in a certain capacity, rather than later on saying, oh, I didn't get to do anything in that case, and then feeling a little bit disheartened about it. But actually asking that question, you might get the answer saying, well, actually it's a bit complex, but you will learn, or you will see X, Y, and Z, and that way you know your capacity in that case and understand it. Whilst sometimes you'll be surprised, oh, actually you'll get to do this and this, and then it's setting that kind of expectations as well.
Yeah, but if you don't ask the question, then nothing happens. So yeah.
Absolutely, I think so. I always do that. I ask, what am I going to get involved in? What should I do here?
Yeah, and that reminds me, Mo, of I don't know if you heard of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Habit 1 is be proactive, and that's exactly what you're talking about. And I think that kind of underpins all of that. Thank you.
Yeah, I certainly, you can tell when you're on your best form at work or when you're not on your best form, or when various people, like you say, I can't remember how you termed them, but I quite like negative Nancy's. So
Mood hoovers, I think I said, yeah.
Yeah, mood hoovers, yeah, and trying not to be that person, even if you're tired, have got other stuff going on. Yeah, at least try not to bring the mood down.
Yeah. But also being aware that sometimes you will be that. I think it's that not beating yourself up when you are having a bad day, just being able to kind of maybe just say less. But yeah, it's just normal. It's normal that our sense of well-being goes up and down, especially when you're working long hours and with a heavy workload.
Yeah, I actually just prefaced it last time when I took a call and I was too tired to think of a way to say it eloquently or politely. So I just said, this is going to sound grumpy. I'm not, I'm just tired and I can't think of a better way of phrasing this. But I don't have X-ray hands, is what I think I continued with. Well, any other comments from anybody? Jack's also shared a feedback form. It would be really great. I've just done it now, took 20 seconds. And it would just be really helpful to see if a follow-up webinar, if anyone gets a chance to try some of those experiments, whether that would be useful or not. And as Lizzie said, we kind of need a bit of proof and a bit of evidence to show whether this is stuff that is helpful. Of course it is. But it's always good to be backed up to support what we're saying, really.
Yeah, I just think it's so it's just interesting to, a lot of those things are things that you can just experiment with, just in a moment, just in one interaction, just try it and see. And I mean, honestly, you'll be amazed sometimes how different, the guy whose colleagues suddenly showed up differently. It was just like the scales had fallen from his eyes. He was like, yeah, but he was really annoying. And now I just realize it's okay. And it's just, it's almost like miracles happen when you start to consider things differently. So yeah, I would love to come back in a month or two and hear people, or a few weeks, and just hear people's results of experiments. It's so interesting to talk those things through. So if you're interested in that, yeah, do put that on the form, and be happy to come back and chat things through. But otherwise, you can send me private messages if you've had some amazing thing happen. Please send me an email. Let me know. I love those stories.
Excellent.
Thanks, Lizzie. And we'll certainly check in at VS. That would be great. Lovely. All right, everybody. Well, we'll draw this evening to a close. Thank you so much for joining, and sorry for the bot. We found the bot who what is this? Yeah, we found the bot culpable of the start, but never mind. Okay. Take care, everyone. See you
All right,
again.
thank